We are building an Agentic lab notebook assistant designed to help researchers reason through experiments without replacing their scientific judgment. In many real-world scenarios, the challenge is not collecting data, but understanding it, interpreting results, and deciding what to do next. Existing tools can summarize information, but they often lack explainability and fail to provide trustworthy step-by-step reasoning. Our system addresses this by interpreting experimental protocols, analyzing results from multiple data types, such as text, CSV files, and images, and suggesting next-step variations. Most importantly, every recommendation is accompanied by a clear explanation of why it was made, enabling researchers to stay in control of their decisions. The platform is built with strong safety boundaries, especially for sensitive domains like biology and healthcare. It applies content filtering, enforces responsible AI principles, and avoids generating unsafe or disallowed guidance. By combining explainability, safe agent design, and robust data and model orchestration, we aim to create a reliable AI lab partner that enhances scientific thinking rather than replacing it.
This is the PhiSphere AI platform. We aim to keep the explanations simple and efficient. This is the main interface. After signing in, you'll find that Azure services are seamlessly integrated into the PhiSphere AI chat experience. You can start a new lab session, choose your specialization, and begin your analysis. You have the option to upload a dataset directly from your computer or import one from OpenML. One of the most powerful features is that you can simply enter the dataset ID from OpenML and it will be instantly loaded into your workspace. Once you click Analyze, the system starts uncovering relationships between patterns and trends, helping you understand what influences what. This is not just a basic tool. It works across multiple domains and is designed to act as a reliable assistant, supporting you throughout your analytical and experimental process. Next, let's talk about trust. Trust in PhiSphere is not just a vibe. It is made of measurable signals and explainable structure. One of the trust signals you will often see is groundedness, such as mostly grounded 75%. Groundedness communicates how strongly the response is supported by your provided data and retrieved context, compared to the assistant guessing from internal knowledge. So, if you see mostly grounded 75%, you can explain it on camera like this. The system is telling us that the response is mostly grounded in the information it had access to, and it is not purely speculative. If the groundedness is lower in another run, you should treat the suggestions as hypotheses that you need to validate experimentally. Along with groundedness, PhiSphere also gives an explainable reasoning flow. When the assistant recommends a next step, it includes a "why I recommend this" style explanation. That explanation helps you understand what in the input data or context led to the recommendation. It also helps reviewers see that the assistant is following a coherent reasoning path instead of giving random suggestions. Along with groundedness, PhiSphere also gives an explainable reasoning flow. When the assistant recommends a next step, it includes a "why I recommend this" style explanation. That explanation helps you understand what in the input data or context led to the recommendation. It also helps reviewers see that the assistant is following a coherent reasoning path instead of giving random suggestions. Now let's switch to export. After you finish an analyze run and you like the output, you can export the results so you can reuse them. Export is useful because it turns what you see in the session into something portable. You can share it with your team, save it for later, or attach it to your lab workflow. When you demonstrate export, say that it is the bridge between your conversation and your documentation. Export captures the important reasoning and context so you do not lose the evidence trail from the assistant. That is especially important in research because the why matters as much as the what. Then there is Print PDF. Print PDF is another documentation option. When you choose Print PDF, PhiSphere generates a clean document version of your analysis output. This makes it easy to produce a shareable record for meetings, reviewer feedback, or internal tracking. Printing to PDF also helps with consistency because you get a structured format instead of scattered chat messages. If you want to mention it explicitly, you can say that print PDF is ideal when you need something that looks like a lab report artifact. It preserves the reasoning structure and the trust signals you saw in the UI, so the PDF is not just text, it is an auditable story of how the assistant responded. Now, let's go to history. History is where PhiSphere becomes truly useful over multiple days, because experiments are not one shot. You can revisit earlier runs, review what you asked, and see what PhiSphere recommended based on the context at that time. That means you can compare decisions, understand how the analysis evolved, and keep a traceable timeline of your reasoning. When you show history on camera, you can talk about how it reduces repeat work. Instead of re-asking the same questions from scratch, you can reference past outputs. You can also use history to check whether a later suggestion is consistent with earlier results, or whether it changed because you uploaded new data.
Now, let's talk about what-if simulation. This is where you explore hypotheticals without immediately running physical experiments. The key thing to say out loud is that what-if simulation is model-assisted exploration, not a physical simulator. It does not claim to exactly reproduce real laboratory outcomes. Instead, it helps you explore plausible changes and generate hypotheses based on the patterns it sees in your data. In the what-if simulation UI, you can show that it asked for one change to a single numeric column. You should mention that this constraint matters because it keeps the simulation controlled. When you change only one numeric column, you can interpret the effect more clearly because you are not mixing multiple variables at once. Then say that you must keep units consistent with your CSV. The simulation expects the change to be in the same units as the dataset column. That is a guardrail that prevents nonsense comparisons. For example, if the column is temperature in Celsius, you change it in Celsius. If the column is pH, you change it in pH. If the units do not match, the simulation's meaning breaks. So PhiSphere encourages you to stay consistent.
Now, let's go to Analyze. Analyze is the step where PhiSphere turns your session context into a structured AI experiment analysis. In chat, you might ask a question like how to interpret a trend or what you should test next. Analyze then takes that intent, merges it with the relevant dataset context, and produces a more structured output than typical chat. So you can say that chat is for conversation and clarification, and Analyze is for experiment-level reasoning. Analyze is where the assistant organizes observations, interpretation, and recommended next steps into a coherent analysis artifact. Now I will talk about AI experiment analysis. The AI experiment analysis feature is designed for lab thinking. It focuses on turning your data and your question into a workflow-oriented response. It typically includes observations drawn from the dataset or the retrieved context. Then it provides analysis of what those observations mean. Then it suggests next steps that you could actually run in a lab setting. Importantly, it also connects the recommendation to evidence. That is how it supports trust. When you see an AI experiment analysis output, you can say that it is not only describing what it thinks, it is explaining why it thinks it. The output is structured so that the reasoning is readable and reviewable. Then there is Print PDF. Print PDF is another documentation option. When you choose Print PDF, PhiSphere generates a clean document version of your analysis output. This makes it easy to produce a shareable record for meetings, reviewer feedback, or internal tracking. Printing to PDF also helps with consistency because you get a structured format instead of scattered chat messages. If you want to mention it explicitly, you can say that Print PDF is ideal when you need something that looks like a lab report artifact. It preserves the reasoning structure and the trust signals you saw in the UI, so the PDF is not just text, it is an auditable story of how the assistant responded. Now, let's go to history. History is where PhiSphere becomes truly useful over multiple days, because experiments are not one shot. You can revisit earlier runs, review what you asked, and see what PhiSphere recommended based on the context at that time. That means you can compare decisions, understand how the analysis evolved, and keep a traceable timeline of your reasoning. When you show history on camera, you can talk about how it reduces repeat work. Instead of re-asking the same questions from scratch, you can reference past outputs. You can also use history to check whether a later suggestion is consistent with earlier results, or whether it changed because you uploaded new data.
We will now run a new experiment by uploading the dataset. This dataset represents solar plant generation data, and these analytics help us understand performance, efficiency, and hidden patterns within the system. The time series analysis allows us to track how key metrics like DC power, AC power, daily yield, and total yield evolve over time. This helps identify trends, stability, and any performance drops or improvements across different time windows. The line charts with statistical bands, mean plus standard deviation, provide deeper insight into normal versus abnormal behavior. They make it easier to detect anomalies, such as unexpected drops in power or irregular spikes in output. The bar and trend visualizations help compare values across different time segments, giving a clear picture of growth, decline, or consistency in the system's performance. The scatter plots are useful for understanding relationships between variables, for example, how DC power relates to AC power, or how power output impacts daily yield. This helps identify dependencies and efficiency gaps. The histogram and box plots provide statistical distribution insights, allowing us to detect outliers, skewness, and data variability, which are critical for ensuring data quality and system reliability. The metrics and thresholds feature enables setting reference lines, such as mean and standard deviation levels, which can be used to trigger alerts when the system behaves outside the normal range. Finally, the AI insight layer summarizes all these patterns automatically, helping users quickly understand what effects. We start by uploading a real dataset, in this case, solar power generation data. PhiSphere automatically understands the structure of the dataset, including key variables like time, power, and energy yield, without requiring any manual pre-processing. It immediately provides visualizations, such as charts and comparisons, allowing us to quickly explore patterns, trends, and anomalies in the data. From there, we can interact with the dataset and choose to analyze it. Once we click Analyze, PhiSphere uses AI to go beyond simple summarization. It actually reasons about the experiment. It processes the data and generates meaningful insights, highlighting important observations like missing values, consistent variables, and relationships between different metrics. Next, the system generates hypotheses based on the data. Each hypothesis is accompanied by a confidence level and a clear explanation, so the researcher not only sees the suggestion, but also understands the reasoning behind it. This makes the system transparent and trustworthy, rather than a black box. In addition to that, PhiSphere suggests next experimental steps and possible variations, helping researchers decide what to do next, instead of leaving them with just analysis. It even includes a what-if simulation feature, where users can modify a variable and explore how it might impact the outcome, enabling faster and more informed decision-making. Overall, PhiSphere transforms raw experimental data into structured insights, hypotheses, and actionable next steps, while always maintaining explainability, safety, and scientific reasoning, making it a true AI lab partner rather than just another analysis tool. After generating the initial insights, the interface allows us to interact more deeply with the experiment. We can explore suggested follow-up questions that help us think like a researcher, not just a data analyst. For example, the system proposes deeper investigations into anomalies, alternative explanations for observed patterns, and even suggests experiments that could falsify certain hypotheses. This encourages critical thinking instead of blindly accepting AI outputs. As we continue, PhiSphere also generates structured next steps for experimentation. In the interface, we can see a clearly defined next experiment suggestion, such as analyzing the relationship between solar irradiance duration and yield efficiency. This shows that the system doesn't stop at analysis, it actively guides the research process forward.
Additionally, the platform provides a conversational interface where we can ask scientific questions or provide more experimental context. Based on the previous analysis, it suggests intelligent follow-up prompts that can be directly used or modified. This creates a continuous feedback loop between the researcher and the AI, making the workflow more interactive and dynamic. Another powerful feature shown here is the ability to transform insights into structured research outputs. With a single click, PhiSphere can start generating a research paper draft, including sections like the abstract, materials and methods, and a full outline. It uses both the dataset and the interaction history to build a coherent scientific narrative, significantly reducing the time needed to document experiments. Overall, what we see in this part of the demo is that PhiSphere is not just analyzing data, it is acting as an intelligent research assistant that helps explore ideas, challenge assumptions, design experiments, and even document results, all within a single unified environment. In this final part of the demo, PhiSphere takes everything a step further by automatically generating a complete research paper draft based on the experiment. As we can see, it starts with the abstract, where it clearly explains the problem, the experimental setup, and the key findings in a scientific and structured way. Then it moves to the materials and methods section, where it describes the experimental design in detail, including how the data was collected, how the variables were controlled, and how the experiment was structured. This ensures reproducibility, which is a critical aspect of any scientific work. After that, the system generates a full outline of the paper, including the introduction, methodology summary, results, discussion, and conclusion. Each section is not just text generation, it is directly grounded in the data